I like to think about intuition, it's the voice of our soul. Like it's our true self talking to us. We have our ego, then we have our soul. So ego is kind of like, it's not bad. Often people think it's a bad thing. It's actually our survival mechanism. Then we have our soul, our true self, whatever you want to call it. That's where we thrive. Ego and the mind it likes to make the 10-step plan, like the whole thing. Like, I want to start this thing, but like, what's going to happen? We don't know unless we start. Whereas the intuition goes, this is the next step. And it doesn't tell you the next one, because once you take that step, your reality is going to change. You're going to change. And you're going to make a new informed step from there.
Hello and welcome to the third Culture Therapy podcast with me, Leila Maghrabi, where we explore the sometimes beautiful, sometimes difficult, and always complicated relationship between heritage and mental well-being. Just now, you heard the voice of empowerment coach and breathwork facilitator Isik Tlabar. Brought up in Turkey, Isik lives and works between Istanbul and London, helping people find their inner power and purpose by connecting to intuition. To do this, she uses a technique called breathwork, which uses breath, sound, and movement to help form a deeper connection between your body and your mind. Isik believes it's important for each of us to cultivate both our inner femininity and masculinity, and I wanted to find out more about why she thought of the self through these terms. We also talk about why and how we can use our intuition to guide us in our purpose. This episode is sponsored by Paradise Fold, the silk hair wrap brand that has done wonders for my locks. I've been using Paradise Fold for a few years now, and aside from being beautifully designed, what makes them so special is that they're made from 100% silk, are double layered and reversible. That's maximizing both wear and style. Since using them, my hair looks healthier, more hydrated, and less frizzy, without the need for chemical-based products, and all while I sleep. So if, like me, you're a time-poor woman with just the right amount of vanity and are after a one-stop solution to world-ready hair, head to Paradise Fold this week with the code TCT12 for a special discount for our listeners only. Thank you, Isik, for being with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. First off, I want to ask you what I normally ask all my guests, which is, which parts of yourself do you most closely identify with, be that culturally, professionally, or otherwise?
I like to think when I identify myself, I can limit myself. I put myself into a box and then I become that. But we're always changing and evolving. So I try not to completely identify myself as Turkish or intuition coach or this. These are the things I do, but it's not who I am. It's almost, it comes from me, through me. But I'm so much more than that. So I see Turkey as it's my roots. That's where I come from. But I belong to the world. So the whole world becomes available in a way.
That's a nice way of putting it. Speaking of Turkey, though, you grew up there. Yeah. What was your upbringing like? What was it like living in Turkey?
So I was born in Istanbul and I lived there until I was 19. Istanbul it's an interesting city because it literally has the Europe and the Asia together. So it has everything. It's so rich. There's all the cultures like literally in one city. So it has the East world, but influences of the West as well. It's, I would say, the more modern version of the East world, but it still has a lot of sexism going on, a lot of very male-dominated. So I grew up with, in a male-dominated environment in a way. So I had beliefs and stories like men are more powerful than women. It's a man's world. It's feeling unworthy, feeling I don't matter. Like these stories were kind of like fed into me because of the environment I was in. So I would say there was a lot of this empowerment, but also the culture is very warm. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of connection. So I grew up with so much love, so much connection, so much like community almost. And I only realized this when I left, when I came to London. The culture there it's very much based on community, not very individuality. So people are together, but they might abandon who they are in order to stay together, or they might not even have the courage to explore who they are. Whereas here, like in UK or London or like US and much more like Western world, it's much more individual. Like, who am I? Your own expression, and it can feel disconnected. So it's almost like two ends of the spectrum. So yeah, I grew up in that almost like that togetherness energy.
Did you also grow up in a spiritual or religious sort of environment? And I ask because I read from your profile that you had started meditating at a young age, at 8 years old, which is very young. Yeah. And I wondered where that came from. Like, what was that influence?
Yeah, so that came from my mom and dad. They would meditate. Mostly my mom, I would say. But my dad was like very much involved in all the practices, the yoga, the meditation, and different things. So they would, I think we had a yoga teacher that come to our place every week, and he would do hatha yoga. Then it would be meditation. And I remember doing those when I was very young, like 8, 9. So yeah, I would say it was more so my mom's influence. She's a therapist in Turkey, a very successful one. So she always kind of didn't push me to do those things, but gave me the opportunity, like, these are the things you could do, give it a try, like, have a go in these personal growth worlds or seminars and trainings. I found breathwork when I was 19, thanks to her. I had one-to-one sessions there. So yeah, it was in the environment.
Wow, sounds like a really rich way to grow up. The apple obviously doesn't fall very far from the tree, given that you fall, but you didn't actually start off that way. You first, I don't know if we'll call it a detour, but you first went into architecture and you studied in the UK. You came to the UK to study architecture. Why did you decide to pursue that path, and how and why did you decide to leave it behind for this career that you have now?
Initially, I wanted to do something about psychology, something similar to my mom, like psychology, humans, helping people, something like that. Then I wanted to be a dancer. At some point, I wanted to be like a film director. At another point, I wanted to be a writer. Then I wanted to do interior design. And then I thought, well, actually, I think it was my dad saying it to me, oh, why don't you do architecture? It covers the whole thing. And I was like, okay. But they're very different. I didn't realize that architecture is very technical, interior design is a lot more artistic and creative, which is, I'm a lot more like that. And that's how I came here when I was 19 to do architecture. I remember doing foundation, which covered a lot of artsy things like photography and sculpture and this and that, which I really enjoyed. Very quickly, maybe the end of first year, I realized, okay, architecture is like not for me, but I wanted to finish it. Like, I'm here, I want to finish this. So after finishing uni, I moved to London. I went to so many job interviews, maybe like 12 job interviews that year. And I did 2 short jobs at architecture offices, which made me realize that this is not it's not fulfilling my soul. Like, it's not natural to me. It doesn't bring me joy. And all along the way, I was always going to trainings, personal growth, development things. And in none of them, no one said, you're meant to do architecture. Like, it never came up. It was more so helping people, guiding people. And then there was a point where I decided, okay, like, now I want to choose this. I want to go for coaching. Went to a qualification back in 2017, which, like I said, I knew all the things, but it gave me more permission to just go for it, like, and be part of a community. People are doing similar work. And around that time, I also started doing workshops for women. They were called goddess circles, and they were meditation, dance, breath work. And I just kept doing them. Started doing breath work as well. Yeah, so everything just kind of came from that.
And did you feel like there were any barriers or sort of obstacles, whether internal or external, to you of leaving this sort of, leaving architecture behind and going into something? It's a lot more esoteric, right? Yeah, like, architecture is really it's very practical, it's very physical. There's structure at the end of it, versus what you've gone on to do, very meaningful, but very intangible in many ways. Yeah. So very different things. Yeah. And I asked this as someone who left a law degree and a law career behind to go into writing and journalism. And while there are obviously crossovers, but there was this people were like, really, you're leaving law to do this? Like, are you crazy, sort of thing? And that was both internal and external. And I battled with that for a while. Did you have any of those?
Yeah, of course. I had it around, because I'm a lot more intuitive. I also have a logical side. I grew up with a lot of importance to logic, importance to like mind and, data. So it was almost like switching from what I was taught from the norm into more of owning who I am, more of like the intuitive side. And that felt scary. That felt scary to almost, right, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do. Because it's also intuitive coaching. It's not like corporate coaching. And like it's a lot more energetic, and I work very like energetically, intuitively. So I think owning that, like owning the fact that this is what I want to be doing, felt scary. And yeah, some of my friends at the time or family, they were like, what are you doing? Like, you've given so many years to this, like, what's this? Which comes from a good intention. But again, it was about like trusting myself. Like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go for it. But yeah, it was scary for sure.
So tell us a bit more about intuitive coaching, what it entails, and breath work. What exactly does this involve?
I like to think about intuition. It's the voice of our soul. Like, it's our true self talking to us. We have our ego, then we have our soul. So ego is kind of like, it's not bad. Often people think it's a bad thing. It's actually our survival mechanism. We grow up, and as we're growing up, we look at the world and we see, like, how do we need to be? Like, oh, if I do this, I'm loved. If I do that, I'm not loved. And we create our beliefs, like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, we have these stories. So that's all part of ego, and ego's there to keep us in the safe area, like in the known. Then we have our soul, our true self, whatever you want to call it. That's where we thrive. That's where we grow. That's our true essence. That's where we, that's our purpose in a way. We have our natural gifts and talents in us. And I like to think about intuition, that's the voice that guides us. Ego and the mind it likes to make the 10-step plan, like the whole thing, like, I want to start this thing, but like, what's going to happen? We don't know unless we start. Whereas the intuition goes, this is the next step. And it doesn't tell you the next one, because once you take that step, your reality is going to change, you're going to change, and you're going to make a new informed like step from there. So it almost doesn't make sense to plan the whole thing. But most people, like, we do that because that's safe. But that's safe. It's not as expanding. So the work I do in my coaching, I first teach people how to identify the different voices. Like, that's the mind talking to you. It's not bad, but it's a safe area. Like, do you want to go into that? You can, by the way. But here's another route, which is so much more magical and expanding and exciting. And it feels unsafe to that part, but it's so much more alive. There's so much more liveliness there for you. So we identify the difference, and I guide them to make choices from this, from their soul, from their true self. So in the session, it looks like I give them intuitive readings about, it can be things they want to create, relationship they want to create, the travels they want to go on to, books they want to write, the business they want to create. Because everything is energy, so we just tap into the highest potential of that vision, whatever it is. So we're using our intuition and imagination in a productive way. Often people use their imagination to worry, like to imagine the worst case scenario. So we're taking that energy, because it's just energy, and we're putting it in a higher place for a higher purpose. Our bodies are so intelligent, and there's so many ways to connect with our bodies, so many ways to do breath work as well. The one I do is the mouth breathing in and out from the mouth. Sometimes I use Wim Hof method as well. And it's to really get you out of the mind, get you out of the ego, the stories, and back into the body, back into your truth, back into what you really care about. And there's two ways to work with it. One is if someone has experienced a lot of trauma, there might be a lot of heaviness, stuckness in the system. So it's to clear those out so that life can flow freely. Or maybe you've already worked through these things and you just want to expand into your next level. That also has a very like an uplifting, expanding energy. So it's one of the fastest ways I found to connect to your body, to connect to your truth. It cuts through all the bullshit and shows you what's true for you in a way. And it's very empowering because everyone can do it. You can just sit at home, do breath work, and you get insights, you get wisdom. I find we live in a world, not to generalize, but it's taught not to trust ourselves, not to trust our bodies. And there's a lot of messaging, oh, like do this, do that. And because we don't trust ourselves, we hand over our power to authority, to different things. And I find the breath work and intuition, it's all about empowering yourself to find your own answers. Think of it this way. If you're well, you feel whole and complete, your cup is full, you're gonna just operate so much better. If you're a mother or someone who cares for others, you're gonna have even more care for others. So it's almost essential. Like it's, I think it's as necessary as like you have food, you drink, you sleep, you have these basic needs, like you have shelter. But actually, the way we operate in the world, we're also using our mind. So it's like the mental health element. Like it's so important to give yourself these things. And with the breath work, what I find, it allows more of space for joy, like more of actually enjoying life. Like something about moving from survival to thriving, like operating from survival level. And there's a place for that as well. But once you tip over to like thriving and actually creating what you love, then all the problems kind of take care of itself. And you reach to this tipping point of like, now it's a lot more effortless, like easy.
Where do you see the space or the difference, given, especially since you have direct experience with this, therapy, so talk therapy versus something like breath work?
Talk therapy can be a great entryway, like can be a great starter for someone. Maybe they've never done any, they haven't explored themselves at all. They haven't done any personal development work or spirituality. And maybe they operate a lot more from the mind. It can be just great to take these things out so that when you share, when you're talking, something happens that you're hearing yourself talking that. So that even that, it's like, oh, like that's obviously not true. Or you might have realizations like that. But what happens with talk therapy, it might not resolve it fully because it gets limited almost. You're in the front part of the brain, like you're talking from a mental place, whereas healing happens in the body. So breathwork takes you to the body, and without having to share any of that, through doing the breath and sound and movement, your body goes, great, amazing, a space to heal, let me actually do this. And it does its thing, and the healing happens. So it really depends what someone is looking for. If they don't want to dive deep end, because it can feel like a deep end with breath work, they want to take it slow, talk therapy is great. But if they don't want to like waste time, I just want to go straight to the truth and like heal this, release this, then breath work, is great.
I understand what you're saying very personally because I've experienced both. I've done therapy and talk therapy, and you and I have had breathwork sessions. And so what you've just described makes a lot of sense. I started out years ago wanting to understand certain things, and I needed, in a way, to be able to articulate them. But then there was a certain point at which I did feel that it needed to be much more embodied. But most recently, I had this experience with you when there wasn't anything left to articulate. I was in a state of shock and trauma as a result of the war on Palestine, on Gaza at the moment happening. And it was very triggering for me, and I had a lot of emotions inside me. And there wasn't really much to talk about in that instance. Nothing was going to change. I very much understood what was happening, but there wasn't a therapy session that was going to kind of take that away or help me reconcile that. But I was in a very, very difficult emotional, mental state. And I came to you because actually I realized that I wasn't able to breathe deeply anymore. I was struggling very much with my breath on a basic level. And someone I had spoken to about it, and they mentioned breath work and you. And then we did those. And the effect after just one session was so incredibly transformative. Now, you and I have done a few sessions together, but it was so deeply transformative, having experienced weeks of being in a very frozen state of being, unable to take deep breaths, unable to really, I didn't want to speak. And even if I could, there was nothing really left for me to say. And then you and I had that session. And then the first session, it was a very, very weepy one. There was just a lot of tears, a lot of tears. But they had to come out. It really, just something from deep within my cells had to release itself. And I remember being a little bit frightened after the first session, being like, oh God, is it just all gonna be tears and sadness? But then we had another one and the second one, and I was so surprised by how quickly I was able to access joy that I hadn't for the preceding months. So to go from that state to then experiencing, actually being able to taste joy again, was really profound. But for those who haven't experienced it, can you give a bit of a breakdown? Like, what would someone who doesn't know, they come to you, what would they be experiencing?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I like to look at emotions as they're just energy in motion. They just want to be felt. You can see lighter emotions or darker emotions. So the lighter ones are things like joy, gratitude, peace, emotions that are celebrated in our society. Like you feel them and no one says like, oh, why are you happy? That's just fine and great. But when you're feeling, let's say, guilt or shame or sadness and anger, we're not taught how to process these. So most commonly what happens is we might suppress these emotions. But what you're doing when we do that, this is like your emotion spectrum, you're limiting the darker ones here, but you're also limiting the lighter ones. So you're just becoming a reserved human being, like almost becoming human being, but not fully alive, like not allowing, all of yourself. So in the sessions, as you've experienced, I always say all of you is welcome, all parts of you, it's safe to feel, it's safe to like cry and laugh. Like even that in itself is a safe space. So even that your body feels that, okay, I can feel, I can express, I can release. Then we use the breath. So in the first session, I always do Wim Hof. So it's 4 rounds of breathing in and out from the mouth. And what that does is, and I'm also guiding you in the session to, we set an intention, something you want to work with. Maybe you want to release something, you want to connect with something. We do a bit of talking in the beginning just so that I understand like where you're at and where you want to be by the end of the session. So I guide the session towards that with the suggestions I give. And it's like, think of it like as you're breathing in and out, your body's like a room and we've opened the windows and new air can come in. So as the new air comes in, like the old air goes out, and that can include like emotion release, like energetic just upgrade happening. When we really get out of the way, our bodies naturally heal. So I'm just facilitating that. I'm just allowing your body to, do its thing. Like when there's all this, I want to say darker emotions, like just denser emotions there, and we're not processing it, actually makes the system heavy, the body heavy. And that's why we might feel, oh, I don't want to do anything today. It's not that you don't want to do anything today, it's just all this heaviness there. You're almost like having a bag full of potatoes and doing everything with those. Like it feels heavy, it feels hard. So once you release that, there's much more lightness, like more joy can come in. So yeah, that's what we do in a session. Like I guide person to breathe in and out. If it's online, I guide. If it's in person, I do body work, energy work to help move the energy a lot more in the body. And I encourage the person to move their body, shake, whatever they want to do. And then I guide a meditation, a visualization in the end that often can be connecting with your younger self, that maybe feels a little bit alone or sad, or your higher self. Like if you want to create something, this is the version of you that have already done that. What is it telling you? What's the message like they're giving to you? Or something else, depending on the intention. So every session is very different, really. And because we're always changing, even if it's with the same person, it's different every time. So yeah.
But can people also do this themselves? Or do they always need to be facilitated and guided?
Again, it depends on their level of experience. Okay. If they've never done it before, it'll be great if we do it together and then they get used to it. And after a while, they feel confident enough to, set a timer, put music on. They can. Because you kind of go into a bit of an altered state of consciousness. And if you're not very at ease and comfortable with holding yourself, then, fear might kick in, you might panic. So it helps when someone's there, like holding that space for you.
So not for beginners, but eventually with some sessions and some understanding and awareness, this could be something that people practice themselves.
Like I do on my own sometimes, and that works.
Well, I mean, you are a breathwork facilitator.
I can do it on my own.
You can do it on your own. If you like this episode and are looking to find out more, then please do visit Third Culture Therapy Pod on Instagram, YouTube, and Substack, and listen to the show on all the usual channels. And please do consider supporting our work by donating a cup of coffee or two to the team via our Patreon. You described your work in terms of on the coaching front, and I'm sure obviously the breathwork feeds into this, but on the coaching front, as you are bringing people into their own, and you described it as this sort of caterpillar turns into a butterfly effect. But there is a process in between. We know it as like goes from caterpillar to butterfly. It's a very romantic notion, but there are steps in between, and some of those can be challenging and difficult. Can you describe some of those steps?
Yeah. So I love that analogy. I first heard this from Rebecca Shaman years ago, 2016. She used to do cacao ceremonies in London. And she talked about this. So it was the caterpillar turning into butterfly. Before it becomes a butterfly, there's a phase where it's not a caterpillar anymore. It's not a butterfly yet. So it's this weird in between mushy thing where it's just nothing and everything at the same time. And then it turns into a butterfly. Often as we go through our own transformation of becoming our true self, we experience this hero's journey in a way. We might start as caterpillar, our own version of this is who I am, but it might not feel very resonant. Like we might not feel fully ourselves. And that phase, there could be a lot of being led by the mind, living from like mental constructs, not from our truth. Maybe listening to societal rules or what was taught to us and just carrying on with that. But it's almost like a cycle. And once we decide like, okay, we want something else, like in the coaching, for example, people come and they often say, I feel stuck or this, because they're in a structure that doesn't work for them. Like it's a structure that wasn't even intentional to begin with. They kind of maybe just fell into that, but it wasn't conscious. They haven't consciously chosen that. Mm-hmm. So then we start to bring in, well, what would you want? Like, what do you actually want? Like we go into their true nature first, because if you know yourself, it's much easier to know what you want as well. Mm. So we connect with their true essence, and with the true essence, true nature comes their gifts. Like, what are they actually like good at? Which they might not see it themselves in the first instant because it comes natural to them. It's like, oh, this is just something I do. It's natural, but yeah, that's why it's your gift. It's so effortless and easy to you that you don't even see it like as a thing. So then the more they start to take action from their intuition, applying those insights, the wisdom that comes and they follow it, which also feels scary, by the way. Like in the first instant, it's like, I'm doing this thing, but it feels a bit random. Like they might be judging it. But the more they do that, and because I'm there to support them, like there's a voice next to them going, yes, like keep going, this is great. And they see the results, that result gives like feedbacks in like, oh, this thing works. And in the beginning, I always give them this exercise, like you can try your intuition with small things, like today, shall I eat chicken or salad? Like try with things that are low stakes, like not starting with what's my purpose. Like we got to build to that first, because there's much more tension there. Whereas if you do it small choices, oh, shall I see this friend tonight or do this? You literally feel into both and then you act on it, then you see how that feels. Then your ego, your mind can almost trust the intuition and goes, okay, this stuff works, we can trust it. So then maybe a rebirth comes in at some point, a bit of a death and rebirth, like an old, how can I put it, like an old self dies, who we think we were, And it takes courage to actually step into that unknown. But if it requires a lot of surrender as well. You just surrender. And by that point, the person also surrounds themselves with similar people on a journey, and that helps. Then comes the butterfly, and then it's a lot more effortless after that. But yeah, this phase kind of takes patience, courage, but also trusting, like surrendering, like I'm on the right path. Sooner or later, I'm going to get to the butterfly.
And maybe also accepting that it's not always, the whole path isn't going to be sunshine and rainbows. Exactly. Like there are going to be, even if it's for the better, there will be some sadness to it. Letting go of anything is a little bit sad. You're going to mourn, even if you're happy to leave that version of you behind. You also were once that person. Exactly. And there is a certain mourning to that. Yes. Even if you're also going to be around new friends, you know you have to leave the old ones. Yeah. There's a sad process to that. I definitely speak from experience. There were many a time when I went through this process, and initially I didn't quite understand, does that mean I'm on the wrong path because it shouldn't be sad? Yeah. And this is sort of why I want to say this. It's like, it actually can be sad and painful. Doesn't mean that isn't right. It's just, that's sort of the process. And honoring that what you had is I think also really important. Yeah. Do you find a big difference between the clients and the people you work with in Turkey versus the ones you work with here in the UK?
Yeah, very different.
How so?
Very different. Just everything. Like even the structure of the sessions. So if I think about the language, I think Turkish language is way older than English language. It's like has a lot more depth, has a lot more roots. Someone said to me, English was actually created to communicate clearly and directly. That was the purpose. Turkish was actually a language that was created to actually connect and share depth, to go deep in. The sessions I do in English, they're actually shorter. They're like an hour to 75 minutes. With Turkish clients, if it's a coaching, often it goes to 90 minutes. Because it almost like the sharing something has a lot more nuances. And the desires of the people are different. With my English-speaking clients, it might be a lot more creating something, their business. Like with the Turkish ones, we have to remove this layer of what other people are thinking. Like there's a lot of what people are saying, thinking, which can exist in English culture as well, but so much more in the Eastern communities, because it's all about community, right? So it's all about, like literally some people I know in Turkey, they live through the lenses of other people. Am I happy from their lens? And it's like, doesn't matter. This is your life. So we have to go through, not like fuck others, but this is your life. How do you want to live it? Like really hone in on that, and then opens up, okay, now what do you want to create? How do you want to live in your life? Whereas the English speaking kind of have that already, like, great, I'm already on the path of my individual expression. And for them, it might be bringing in more the connection and the friendships and all those elements, which might not come as natural. So it's a bit of a crossover.
Do you personally have a preference?
I love working with people's visions. Like it can be anything, like their creative projects going on, their business. Yeah, like that. That's what I love. But I also work with like other things. I also do healing in the session if it comes up, talking with their inner child, resolving family issues, which impacts what they're creating also. It's like liberating. Yeah. In the Turkish-speaking sessions, there's a lot more like talking together. It's just like a lot more like passionate, as in the English-speaking is less interruption. Like one person speaks, the other one listens, and then, whereas this one is more like we're just chatting together. So the pace is also different.
You might have heard of hair wraps, but have you heard of Paradise Fold 100% silk double-layered reversible hair wraps? Beautifully designed, snug and luxurious, they're the ticket to hydrated, healthy, frizz-free hair. Podcast listeners get a special discount this week with the code TCT12. I want to ask you now about another part of your work that I haven't experienced, so I'm very intrigued to learn more about. And that's more to do with naked breathwork, as you call it, and you're a sexological body worker.
Yeah.
What are those? What is this? Tell me more.
I'm fascinated by sexuality. I think it's such an ingrained part of us and often suppressed in our world. Every person has experienced sexual shame or trauma to some degree, like literally everyone, small or big. And especially coming from the world I come in, Turkish culture, the messaging I got was like pleasure is for men. It was oriented around that. So I had to break out of that myself. Like I went to a whole sexual healing journey myself and empowerment for the last 7 years, I'd say. So that allowed me to be more of myself. Like I think there's so much space in sexuality to explore who we are, ourselves, our different parts, because we're not one way. We're so complex. And I see it like a playground that you can express and just be yourself. So I did a training back in 2021, somatic sex education and sexological bodywork. So that was essentially had 2 parts. One is more like talk therapy, like talking to people and exploring their sexual selves, like what do they like, not like, what do they have maybe shame around, inhibitions around. And the second part was a lot more, again, the intuition and the breath work, like the differentiation, a lot more embodied. And it would include touch to connect with their bodies more, actually, connect with their genitals, their bodies. I haven't carried on like doing those sessions fully, but when I did the training, I was feeling into, this is great. How can I bring this into my existing work? And I thought I could do naked breath work. Like, let me try. So I tried it and it worked. It's like, it's here now. So what happens in naked breath work? You do it nude. I actually receive a lot of questions going, is it really naked? It's like, yeah, it is. It is. But you're always at choice at the level of nudity you want to go to. We have a sharing circle in the beginning, and then we have something called conscious undressing ritual. So we do a bit of shaking to release, and everyone closes their eyes and drop into their bodies. And I ask everyone, what's the one thing you want to let go? One thing you want to release. It can be a thought, an emotion, a memory, something. And by letting that go, you can also remove an item of clothing. So it's like consciously letting it go. And after that, I give people choice. You can now keep your eyes closed. You can open your eyes, witness others, or you can open your eyes and keep your hand up, meaning you also welcome being seen, being witnessed. So I give choices to people. Then we look around, and it's a very sacred space, actually. It feels quite tantric, and a lot of emotions come up. Fear come up, shame come up, freedom comes up, like everything, the whole array, the light and dark and everything. We do 3 rounds of this. And by the end of that, it feels very normal. Like it feels, oh, we're just naked and free, like kids. That's the whole point. It's actually not a sexual event. So it's like, wow, we're just naked and free. So then we start the breath work. Everyone lays down and the breath work journey starts. So even that whole shedding allows people to go deeper. It also brings up any body image things or trauma related to sexuality that might also come up. But it's also very healing to be in a space where you're naked and no intimacy is done or shared. So that can also create a whole new like reference point for people.
I really like the way you put just the whole nudity removed from sex and sexuality. It seems like a basic idea, but so rarely done. And I haven't obviously tried something like that, but it must be very powerful. You're also very interested in just exploring gender dynamics, femininity, masculinity, the ways in which they coexist and or limit each other. what have you discovered in the years that you have been exploring this and kind of unpacking it, be it through your breath work, your own personal journey, the naked breath work, and just all that we just discussed?
I used to have very long, like curly hair, big curly hair. And I used it that way for years, up until when I turned 30, I decided to shave off my head. And I held it. I love rituals. Like any option to give it a ritual, like do a ritual, I'm down for it. I invited in, I think 13 of my friends, my close friends, and they were all space holders. They made a circle around me, and I, tied my hair and I cut it and like shaved it. Then I asked everyone to come and like look at me, almost like see me in this, like a very vulnerable state. It felt like a whole rebirth, really. So they all did that, and that was to close off the 20s, like my time in 20s, which was one massive exploration. Like just so after shaving the head, it felt like a clear slate, like almost genderless, and it showed me how I was actually hiding behind the hair a little bit. Like I was this pretty girl with a pretty hair kind of thing, and I got bored of that role. Like I just got bored of that. I enjoyed having the attention to my hair, but I'm so much more than hair. And I really wanted to find the true femininity in me, like without the hair, without the makeup and anything. So after that, what happened, I actually integrated this deeper masculine in me, like this clarity, this power, also the dark masculine, which now I'm coming back to the feminine. I'm growing my hair now, again.
Can you explain, I suppose, a bit more what you mean by masculine and feminine and energies, and because I think people will understand it differently. Everyone will understand it differently. And yeah, I mean, we all have both to varying degrees. And each one has a different reputation, let's say, that is not necessarily grounded in absolute truth, whatever. I mean, notwithstanding, there isn't really absolute truth. When we say masculine energy and we say feminine energy, what do we mean really by that?
Yeah, of course. So I like to see as more even like the yin and yang. So yin is much more inwards, feminine is a lot more inwards, and yang is like outward, masculine is going out. So yin could be like creative, soft, sensitive, more inwardsy, like more inner world. Whereas yang is all about like creating outwards, like doing things in the world, like more being and doing. Yeah, maybe that's like the best differentiation I've come up with so far. I also try to not make, I'm in my feminine now, I'm in my masculine. Like the key is actually to be both, to hold both at the same time. Because we're never fully in one or other. We're kind of, having both. But yeah, yin, feminine is like yin inwards, masculine out, yang.
How can one know if they're not balanced, let's say?
So yeah, for example, let's say, I actually talk about this. I do a thing called monthly visioning. First Monday of every month, we vision the coming month. We write it down, like journaling is the online thing I do. And in there, I talk about this. When you have a vision, you're actually using both of these parts in you, both the feminine and masculine. So you're receiving the idea, you're receiving the vision. It's actually a yin quality, it's a feminine quality. And then you're going out, you're taking action, you're bringing that into the world. That's a yang thing. And people might think that's it, and then it comes. But no, there's actually another step where you receive the creation. You actually allow it to come to you, and that's the surrender. That's yin again. So it's almost like dance with the world, dance with the universe. So if we're always receiving the idea, it's an excess of yin. It can create anxiety almost. Sometimes anxiety is actually just built up energy that needs to be put out. Or you're taking action. That's an excess of yang. You can have burnout. So if you're having burnout, it's definitely an excess, a lot of masculine. Or I don't want to say if you're having anxiety, it might be excess of yin, but there's a lot of inward energy, but you're not putting it out, either in taking action, even working out, like that can be great. like I found this, I forgot her name, Kimberly Ann, this nervous system regulation teacher. She works with female bodies. And she said actually most of the nervous system research that was done on men, actually. So when they say you need to like down-regulate your nervous system, it actually applies most of the male bodies. With female bodies, we need healthy aggression, which means it might be working out, it might be pushing forward.
Right.
That might be the thing that's regulating us. So
if someone came to you, if a woman came to you and you saw that perhaps their feminine energy was a bit low, or they said to you, I'm struggling to connect more with my feminine energy, which I would just say anecdotally, I found a lot to be the case, just because modern day life sort of does push women much more into these outward facing doing roles, which is in and of itself isn't wrong or a bad thing, but if it's coming at the expense of something else, it does. What would be some of the practical steps you could give them, and would your breathwork and the intuitive coaching be a part of that?
yeah, definitely. So I would first like look into their schedule, as in like what are they doing on a day-to-day, how busy it is. And if it's very busy, that's okay. You don't want to be like cancel everything, like that's too much of a change. So it's like little incremental change, like maybe putting at least like 20 minutes in between things, so they have time to do nothing, like you're just being for 20 minutes, which might feel uncomfortable to begin with, because you're like, what am I doing? I'm literally like, I could be productive in this instant, this is a waste of my time. No, it's actually not. Rest is very productive, and you get ideas, your creativity might come in, your intuition talks to you in those spaces of time. But if you're too busy going from next to the next, you might be getting that intuitive hit, but you're not there to receive it. You've gone to the next thing. So if you have these spaces in between, that allows your nervous system to also slow down a little bit. I would also give them things like dance, movement, like just putting music on and dancing. And breathwork definitely helps to drop more into the body. It might be things like, depending on the person, like whatever their joy is, it might be writing, but not from a productive place, like just journaling for like 20 minutes, half an hour.
And I know I asked this question for women, but presumably since we're saying that both men and women need to have this balance, this would be the advice you would also give men.
Yeah, exactly. And with them, if they have kids, I might say like almost, because kids, especially when they're young, like around like up until 3, 4, they're a lot more like innocent and pure, and they see the world, it's new and awe and wonder. They're great teachers, like they know everything really. And then they become quite little adults, and so if they have kids especially, like it's being with them like from their world, not from your adult like perspective, but like, because that's quite like amazing, so that can be another thing. I find with, I don't want to say feminine, but maybe the more yin is like seeing everything, like noticing everything, and yang can be quite like one-sided, and that's great, we need that singular focus too. But like with the kids, like they see everything, so maybe it's a bit more like yin-like. So I would say that.
And finally, my last question to you is, how do you take care of yourself, given how much of your life is about, well, looking out for others and elevating them and trying to bring them into their power and purpose, which is beautiful, but takes a lot. What do you do for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not that good at resting, like currently. I'm definitely learning to be better at it. But what I do is I love baths. I take like long baths, like they're very long, like 2-3 hours, sometimes 4 hours. Yeah. I have my life.
God, you can do a 2-hour bath.
Yeah. I watch Friends, watching bath, like in the bath. I love it, with the Epsom salt and candles. Where I'm staying now, like I'm doing that every evening. Yeah, that's my way of like, I'm just here and just releasing everything, all the energies. What else do I do? I also receive sessions. I work with energy healers. There's 2 people I work with, on and off. And they're just great because a lot happens in my world also. I move quite fast and things move fast. So it's great to receive that input. I go to nature. Like I love the trees in UK. They're different in Turkey. They're very different, like very different climates. So there's big trees here and I go and I just hang out with them for hours again, maybe like 3 hours or something, 3-4 hours. What else do? I receive massages. There's this great massage therapist I have in Istanbul. She's a healer also, so she does kinesiology. And we were doing things like supplements. She would have me hold like zinc, and then she would test how often do I need to take that, and literally create this personalized supplement thing for me.
Wow.
So yeah, Turkey is great for that kind of stuff, like the comfort and nourishment and yeah, depending on the phase I'm in. So let's say I travel around a lot. Let's say I went to 3 places, then I come back and I take like a week, not off. I still do sessions here and there, but like a down regulating. I do my morning walk. So I get up, I journal. Journaling really helps me. Like I journal about the last day. So my brain is like, okay, that's complete. We can start the new day. I go for a walk by the sea in Istanbul. Then I start my day. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are beautiful. You're kind of tempted me to make a bath tonight.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm like a
not
very
really into
strong
them,
bath
but
promoter.
You really
I get people into bath. Yeah, 100%. People always go, "Does your fingers not go wrinkly?" Yes, so what? Like no one's gonna come and your finger has gone wrinkly. Get out. Like no one's gonna tell you off.
Least of my worries, my fingers going crinkly.
But you also need to like keep your phone out and put some nice music on. It's like a ritual, and you also can say releasing everything I need to release.
Nice. Thank you so much, Isik. That was really wonderful, and I've learned so much. So I really appreciate your time here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, you're most welcome. I would love it if you would like, follow, and review this episode. And please share it far and wide with friends, family, colleagues, the lot. Every little click from you helps elevate this podcast, allowing me to carry on producing great content for you.